I think there's a misperception that there are people who are on Social Security and SSI benefits that somehow don't deserve to be. It's a very challenging standard. You have to jump through a lot of hoops, and you have to show a desperate level of need to get into those programs.
You can have $2,000 in a bank account as a single person or $3,000 as a couple, but you cannot have $2,001. That's over-resourced.
Every year, millions of people receive overpayment notices. This is documentation from the government, from the Social Security Administration saying, hey, you're gonna have to pay that back.
It's not always quick, right? Like, they're not like, oh, last month you shouldn't have been paid. It's like 2 years ago you should not have been paid. And here is how much you owe us, which can be thousands of dollars.
Everybody makes errors, and it happens at Social Security. But when it happens at Social Security, it's on the recipient to fix it.
Mi nombre es Natividad Meraz Aguilar. Seguro Social me estaban cobrando $4,000 primero. A la segunda semana ya eran $8,000. Entonces, ¿yo de dónde voy a agarrar para pagar este dinero?
I first met Natividad in February 2020 in the geriatric clinic at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. A doctor had flagged her because she was having high blood pressure from the stress of dealing with this SSI problem.
Ese cobro, que yo no tenía manera de dónde pagarlo, me sentía desesperada, porque pues sí es una organización grande del Seguro Social.
I was impressed by what she had already done to try to advocate for herself. She had already gone to Social Security to try to figure out what was happening.
Yo fui a hablar con la trabajadora y me dijo que yo debía $4,000. Entonces yo le dije que ¿por qué? Y ya me dijo que porque yo estaba agarrando en exceso. Le contesté, yo le dije, no, pero ¿cómo en exceso? Porque yo tengo que pagar renta, tengo que pagar biles, tengo que pagar teléfono y el cable. ¿Qué me queda? Nada me queda.
When you get an overpayment notice and you don't know what it is, it's a huge challenge to try and track that down.
In Natividad's case, they went back to 2017 and 2018, and they issued the notice at the end of 2019.
Me dijeron que en un banco, que no me recuerdo cómo se llama ese banco, nunca en mi vida lo había visto ese banco.
She literally never had this money that Social Security thought she had. Serendipitously, before meeting Natividad, I had happened to have watched a video done with, I think, some staff people from Justice and Aging who were talking about SSI overpayments. So immediately after meeting her, I went home, looked that up on my computer, and I was like, no, like, she did it right. This is what we need to follow up on. And then that's when the pandemic hit and field offices shut down.
Overpayments have been a very serious problem for a long, long time. COVID just made it worse, a lot worse, exponentially worse.
Offices were closed for a long time, starting in March of 2020.
What are you supposed to do? There's no one who'll pick up the phone. You get a notice that says to go to the local office, and it's closed. No one's been there for weeks.
It was very hard to get into contact with the field offices during the pandemic. You know, I would be calling sometimes for months.
You're really at a standstill, and meanwhile, you're depending on this money to pay your rent, to buy food, healthcare, medication, all the stuff.
Again, I have to say, you're talking about financially vulnerable people, and you're talking about a group of people who are either disabled or elderly. And in some, instances where there are errors, the errors are compounding in money, in penalties, if you will. So there came a point where they realized, all right, sometimes overpayment notices are being sent, and we are reducing benefits or even totally eliminating benefits to these recipients, and it's not their fault. COVID is going on. They were not able to let us know in some viable way that their financial circumstances had changed.
We knew there were so many, many, many more people who needed relief because they've already been banging on doors that didn't open for months on end. Money has been withheld. They're in dire situations. They need it fixed. So we filed a lawsuit.
When I I was first approached about this case, I had so many acronyms to learn, IFR, SSI, all these different things I knew nothing about. And so I had to learn the language. I had to learn about the rules and the regulations. But quite frankly, thank God for organizations like Justice and Aging, because they really are masters at this. They are the experts and can talk about this off the top of their head.
Sheila came into the case before this just all in. She was excited about the case from the get-go. She brought great partners from Arnold & Porter in to work with us. They gave us a lot of firepower that as a smaller group, we wouldn't have had.
So after years of work and at least a year of settlement negotiations, we finally, if you will, struck a deal.
And we ended up a really great result.
And when I tell you, we were so elated and so excited. We just felt so blessed that we were able to help people.
That's about $353 million going back to low-income people. But they're going to be small checks, like under $1,000 for most people, like $700. So that's just a lot of people getting a lifeline.
Everybody should care about this issue, elder poverty.
Y también si puedo decir esto, que las personas que escuchen o vean todo esto, también se fijen cómo también en el Seguro Social, cómo trabajan también.
My clients are lucky that they got referred to me and I could help them find a solution, but you should not need a lawyer to fix these problems with the agency.
I think that more resources are needed to help them with advocacy, such as Justice and Aging, because this stuff is just, navigating the system is extremely difficult. So they need more advocates, and if we could find a way to get more resources to assist them with that so that they're not always out there on their own, I think that that's very much needed.